welcome back to the North Score Review Show. This is episode 6, where we are reviewing Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I am your host, Nick, and today I am joined by two guests, both with video and audio. A pleasure for the ears and eyes. My first guest is Jake. Jake, how are you doing? You're returning from the She-Hulk episode. Back for more Marvel.
Came out this week and I'm ready to carry some more Marvel momentum. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk some Black Panther.
Perfect. And I'm also joined by Matt. Hello, Matt. Welcome back to the show.
Pleasure to be here again.
Pleasure to have you. We're talking Black Panther 2. This is the final film in Phase 4 of the MCU, the first phase of the multiverse saga, and the final Marvel film of 2022, which is exciting, I guess. I don't know. People are excited about that.
Yeah.
But, let's get into our general thoughts for the movie. Jake, let's start with you. No phone calls this time, please.
Yeah, no phone calls this time. Phone's not going off here. I'd say that I was I wasn't disappointed. I was actually, I didn't walk out of the theater feeling like I wanted my money back or anything like that. It was a fun film.
What a bar to set. I wasn't disappointed.
I'm not gonna lie.
I didn't want my money back, so I guess that's a good thing. I think that's the bar.
I guess that's been kind of the theme with Marvel this year. It's been a lackluster year. So I'm glad that they kind of ended on this point. I wasn't really I wasn't feeling invested to this movie. I just the promotional material creeped up on me. I was like, oh, it's coming out this week. I didn't even realize it. Mm-hmm. So it was good to be like, okay, I'm gonna go see an MCU movie. Let's see how it is. And low expectations helped.
That does always help, for sure. Can only go up from there.
Oh yeah.
Matt, how about you?
Low expectations were not the case for myself, and it did the opposite of what it did for Jake. I think I didn't really get what I wanted from this movie. I think my expectations were set. I don't know if I would say high, but just differently. Just going off of the first trailer that was released for Wakanda Forever made it feel like they were going to go for a very different kind of vibe for a movie, of a slower, maybe more brooding picture that was more heavily focusing on the loss of Chadwick. Mm-hmm. But as I watched the movie, very early on, I felt like, okay, no, this is just another Marvel movie that they clearly had written before Chadwick's passing and then had to hastily rewrite the story to put Shuri as the protagonist. And I mean, mm-hmm. In this case, it's a really tragic situation, and you got to do what you got to do to make the movie work. But I think they didn't really rewrite heavily enough and restructure the movie mm-hmm. the way that I think they should have to really make the most of, they had a lot of complex thematic density that they could have pulled from to really make this a special sort of thing. But it just felt like, they had to keep it in the puzzle piece to follow in Feige's plan, and they didn't really have much wiggle room to really adjust the story the way that I think it should have been. But that's just the nature of Marvel movies. I think at this point, there's not really much creative freedom for the directors to really take. Mm-hmm. And it just, for me, ended up like the movie was trying to be two different things. Like it was trying to be an ode to Chadwick Boseman and trying to give him a send-off and say goodbye. And then it was also just trying to be the last piece of Phase 4 and trying to get us from A to B and setting up the next phase of Marvel. And I think in that trying to be two things at once, it wasn't really able to do either of them fully.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up just sort of like a jumbled mess.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'd it's funny you bring up the them being two different types of movies, or like two different things going on within the same movie. Because I I thought it was actually pretty like self-contained. I thought it like didn't there wasn't a ton of stuff in the film I found that uh was like setting up down the line. It felt pretty like kind of self-contained for me. So I was pretty pleased on that front. There were a couple breadcrumbs here and there that could have been left out, like the um, what's her name, the Julia Louise Dreyfus character.
Oh,
Like all
Val.
that stuff really could have been left out, I think. Um, but I don't know. I think I was pretty satisfied with how it turned out. I think um, it it definitely I agree in the fact that it I think it was like a three-quarter measure. Like they came right up to the finish line of like, and in a lot of cases and a lot of themes and stuff that they wrote into the script of like it's good, but it could be better. It's that like Wonder Woman meme, right? Um,
Mm.
I still was pretty pleased with the movie overall. I think it was a great send off for Chadwick and for T'Challa. Um, and as you guys were saying earlier, it really like these types of things. It's just like a thankless situation, right? Like it's I don't envy any writer or filmmaker who has to work around this, regardless of the situation. Um, so like I think it probably turned out as best as it could, but it was still kind of like Jake, like you said, it's kind of been a lackluster year of Marvel
Yeah.
movies. So it was kind of just like, okay, yeah, that was good. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, Go ahead.
I guess to add with the whole like lackluster year thing, I think that it was I think that it was good to finish on something like this and then head into something like bringing in the big bad in Ant-Man coming up here. So I think that it was a good finish across because you know a lot of people jump to recency bias, and I think it's good to have those two other movies in the past and finish on something like this. And it
Mhm.
doesn't need to be a like big time like end game masterpiece. It's just another like Matt said, another piece of the puzzle, and I wasn't mad at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, that's not where we stay in that
Yeah,
area
yeah.
for future Marvel films.
Yeah,
Hopefully, we go
fingers
back up.
crossed.
All right. Expectations going in. Matt, do you want to kind of dive deeper into
Uh,
that at all?
well, I
You
think
were like, you had high expectations for this film.
I did have very high expectations, and that's probably my downfall because I prefer to go into every movie with as little expectations as possible. But
Right.
I just couldn't help but feel that, you know, given the situation, the team had a opportunity to make something really special and very different. Um, and I don't think it really delivered on what I wanted from this movie, especially in like even comparing other Marvel movies of how they explore grief and loss. Like look at the beginning of Endgame and how
Mm-hmm.
somber and slow paced that was and how you can really feel the effects of the loss. I didn't really feel that in this. And I understand they were going for more of a celebratory feeling, especially when you look at the pre-credits or the
Yeah, the
pre-Marvel
Marvel
logo
intro. Yeah.
intro. Um, although I didn't really like how abruptly the movie started, with the scene
Really?
with Shuri
Yep.
in, you know, as T'Challa is in the middle of dying and you just get thrown into this chaotic thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that was needed. I enjoyed the funeral celebration
Mm-hmm.
segment, but I think it was just a very jarring way to open, and it was clear that, I mean, that's just a part that was thrown in the rewrite, and it's not like they had to work around anything else, so I don't really know why they couldn't have done
Just not
something a little
included
bit.
that.
I don't know, I thought, like, of all of the ways that you could have opened this movie, that's the way that you do it, and I don't know, felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity to me. And for me, that sort of set the tone of what was to follow. And I did enjoy a lot of the moments when they were dealing with Chadwick's death and T'Challa's death in the story, and I think that was the strongest part that this movie had going for it.
I agree.
But then when it was just the regular story, I think that was some of the weaker parts of this film, and I wished that it more heavily focused on the loss of T'Challa rather than most of the other stuff that was going on in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
Although I did like Namor a lot.
Yeah.
And
Namor was great.
And I'm looking forward to seeing him in the future again.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Jake?
We're talking
expectations at all? Yeah.
I didn't really have any expectations. Like, I think that's something that I need to get better at, is not going in with expectations. So I kind of just set it and forget it with these movies. Yeah, they're gonna come out this time, and I went in. I enjoyed all their introductions for some of these new characters that they bring into the universe. Like Matt mentioned, Namor. I was so sold on him when I first saw him in the movie. I didn't really focus on the trailers too much, so I didn't really know much about how he is in the comics and all this stuff. But like when I first saw him, he had those like wings on his feet. That brought me back to like those high top shoes that'll have the wings on the back. I was like, who is this guy? But then like as it went on, I was like, this guy is badass. Yeah. And we're getting into spoiler talk. I can spoil. Are we gonna have a spoiler warning? I am so happy that they kept him alive. I thought that they were gonna kill him off. When I saw that they were about to like kill him off, I was like, no, don't do this. You did this with Killmonger in the last movie. Yeah. Don't make the same mistake. Yeah. And they didn't. And that is like, I was so happy. That left me satisfied. I was like, okay, he's not done. We get more of him.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the comics, he's not really a villain, right? Like,
I've been seeing he's kind of an anti-hero, is he not?
He is an anti-hero, but when you look at the comics and going back to previous movies this year, like with Doctor Strange and the Illuminati, in the comics he is a member of the Illuminati, as well. So he's like a very powerful character, and he is like the first mutant as well in Marvel lore. So the fact that they've got him in now is like, ooh. Maybe we're going to get a little villain to hero arc, and maybe we'll get like a Namor movie in the next couple phases.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I guess just to add on to that as well is also the introduction of Ironheart. Because I know that Ironheart's going into either in production right now or going into production soon. And I like the character. Smart scientist who has this suit. I was also sold on that character, and I'll be excited when the series comes out. So low expectations. I wasn't expecting to, feel so sold on these characters right away. So like I said, went in with low expectations, and we came out of this a better person.
And we all learned something.
Yeah.
I was very, when the news about Chadwick came out, because I think the next Black Panther movie was like on the slate or whatever.
Yeah, it was announced at that point.
Yeah, it was announced. So, like, I, like many other people, was very, a little worried at first, I think, partly because, like, I think we also had just recently got Rise of Skywalker, and that was, I mean, that movie wasn't handled well for a myriad of reasons, but namely, like, the handling of Carrie Fisher's death wasn't the best, and like we've said, it's a thankless situation, so like give them the benefit of a doubt. But
did she die during production?
Yeah, because she had filmed some scenes but not all of her scenes, or she filmed all of her scenes but they didn't work in the context or whatever. That's a whole other bag of worms that we won't get into.
Yeah.
But with that having just happened, it stirred up some worry of like, oh man, how are they going to even begin to like keep that and fix it to work with their like plans going forward. But as soon as that trailer came out, because like we've said before already, this year has been like kind of disappointing for me personally anyway in terms of Marvel films. Both um, Doctor Strange, I was more had higher expectations than Thor, but both kind of left me unsatisfied. Of like, yeah, they were fine. I was really hoping for a slam dunk on multiverse, but alas. But when that Comic Con trailer came out for Black Panther, I was like a little more confident. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see the tone and direction they were going, at least based on the trailer. And the
Mhm.
new characters showing up with Namor and Ironheart being teased in there too, that sold me as well. I'm like, okay, yeah, they seem to have some sense of direction in what they're doing, and it might be a like divergence in tone, which would be welcome after the schlock of, I mean, No Way Home aside, the schlock of cookie cutter Marvel stuff we've been getting lately. So yeah, I was a little more sold after that trailer. Um, and yeah, I wasn't like fully disappointed like Matt was, but it was, I thought it was like they handled it pretty well, just was also still kind of meh, like the last two films. Um, all right, let's dive into some highlights and lowlights. This is going to be full spoilers now, going into the nitty gritty of everything. So if you don't want to hear any of that, we already kind of spoiled a couple things already, but if you don't want to hear any more, definitely check out now. Skip ahead maybe like 20, 30 minutes, maybe. I don't know. Uh, Jake, let's start with you. What are some highlights and lowlights of the film?
Aside from me just absolutely going off about how amazing Namor was and me being sold on Ironheart, is I think overall the I guess the characters who were kind of seen as those side characters in the first movie stepping up in this movie. I thought a bunch of them were like I just thought everyone took a step up, like Okoye, amazing job. Oh, my no, we're good. Okoye stepped it up. Um I forgot her name. Queen
Ramonda?
Ramonda.
Ramonda. Um, amazing performance there as well.
Mhm.
I also need to shout out. What's it called? I watch MMA, and one of the characters in there, Kamaru Usman. He's former welterweight champion of the world. Had a cameo. He's from Nigeria, so
Oh,
he had a special cameo in there that I spotted, and then I saw his name in the credits. I just thought the people who are those side characters stepping it up in this one was very impressive to see, because I didn't really notice that in the first movie.
mhm.
Mhm.
And then I'd say, some of those set pieces were really nice, like the fight on the bridge was really
Mhm.
really cool with
Yeah. That
like the
whole
car.
chase was great.
Oh,
I love
I
Yeah.
that.
love that one
That whole
part
thing.
when Okoye puts the spear through the back of the car and sends that cop car
Yeah,
like barreling. That was
Oh
so
yeah.
cool.
good.
Um, I can't think of much else right now, but let me tell, like,
That's all right.
as much as I can't think, it's just there was so much.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So I'll
It was
toss it
pretty
over to.
stuffed.
It
It
was
was
it was
pretty
very
stuffed.
stuffed. It was stuffed with, yeah, all that good stuff. Matt,
Jake, Jake and
what
I, Jake and I saw it last night, so it's still very fresh. Like the peasants we are. Matt, on
yeah.
the other hand, got to see it a little earlier than us. He got a press screening, the lucky boy. So,
Yeah. I went to a press screening with another podcast that I'm sort of on. And yeah, so I got to see it on Tuesday, which was pretty cool.
what were some
Um,
highlights and lowlights for you, Matt?
I think for me, the biggest highlight was the first time that we see Namor and his people when they
Yeah.
hop on that CIA research ship, I thought
Mhm.
that was an incredibly well shot and well paced sequence.
I agree.
You know, all of the overhead shots when you see all of the people jumping off the side of the ship, and the siren song
And the
that we were
song was
hearing.
creepy.
The song was creepy and it was so well fitting. And I was intrigued. I was like, what is going on? Who are these people? Who are the other creepy little heads that are sticking out of the water in the night? And
Mhm.
I thought that was a really good introduction to the antagonists of the movie.
Mhm.
And then a second highlight was getting to see Killmonger again. I
Yeah, that
thought
was
that
surprising.
sequence was very well done and very well set up the the moral dilemma for Shuri heading
Mhm.
into Act 3, and did a good job of showing the parallels between her and Namor, and how they both feel very similarly and protective of their people and their family that they've lost, and they're both dealing with it in very different ways. Um, and also on top of that, or similar to it, I really liked the showing of Namor's backstory, of going back to the conquistadors settling down in South America and seeing his people being destroyed by the surface dwellers. And
Mhm.
I thought that was a very good, reasonable backstory, and it gave him cause to have the aggression that he does, and it explains why he's so protective of his people. And yeah, I think it did a really good job of building sympathy for him, and he wasn't just like a faceless, angry villain with a random world-destroying motive. It was very, it was very real, and you could
Mhm. Came from
understand
a
him.
human place.
A very human place, and shows that since he's not entirely motivated by evil or whatever, the normal motive would be for so many of these Marvel villains, it's just
Mhm.
power or destruction or whatever. It very clearly gives him a path to move in the future to becoming more of an anti-hero or a protagonist, perhaps in a future movie or a
Mhm.
show or something, whatever ends up coming of him.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are my highlights.
I think your I a couple of your points I agree with, but like with a little twist of like I liked that flashback of Namor's backstory. It just in the context of the whole movie, it felt a little stilted almost of like we took a break to have this huge expository dump of like his backstory and everything in the middle of the movie. So
Yeah,
I think it was like a little poorly executed on some fronts. Um,
yeah, I think the integration wasn't great. They could have
yeah,
mixed it in a little bit better rather than just having him explain everything verbally. But the
yeah,
sequence in itself contained, I enjoyed.
yeah,
My
yeah, and
my
demonstrating that a little more visually too, right? Like the, sorry, Jake, I'll come back to
That's
you.
okay. That's okay.
The like having it shown visually more, like maybe introduce it uh in the beginning a little bit more, do like the flashback there first, and then have it play out throughout the movie instead of him just being like, and that's why I am the way I am, right?
Yeah,
Jake, you
Uh,
were gonna say?
I was gonna say that like point in the movie, the amount of people in my theater that got up to go to the washroom during that like scene when he's like explaining everything. I honestly, I was like, I don't blame you guys. This is like probably the perfect time to go.
That was a
is it
long
though?
movie too.
I
Was it the perfect time? Because it's
I
like
think it was.
explaining the antagonist's motive. I think that's such an important
I
part of the movie.
I
Yeah.
know, but I didn't like right away when he approached when we first see him, didn't he kind of say you need to share your resources with us
Oh yeah, when he
or
first
else?
comes to Shuri and Ramonda.
I feel like for people, for say like a casual fan, you know what? That's good enough. Bad guy, let's go. But I know what you mean by like, okay, but now we get this in-depth
You're
look.
missing a vital part of
Yeah.
like backstory. Yeah, totally. One of my lowlights, I would say, I wasn't. I mean, it's a little complex because like I wasn't a fan of how um Shuri was kind of passive for a lot of the movie up until maybe like the final act where she starts like having like more active motives and actually starts taking action. I mean, the flip side of that though is that the ensemble cast was there, right? Like everyone kind of stepped up, like you said, Jake, and it being way more of an ensemble rather than it being like T'Challa's movie in the first one. So I think having all of those actors and actresses have a more pivotal role was great to see as well. But then also at the same time, like having Shuri be like the main protagonist, it felt like a lot of stuff was done for her throughout the first couple acts. Like Okoye is the one who wants to go get the scientist, right, Riri, and
Mm-hmm.
brings Shuri along, and then Shuri gets captured, and Nakia has to go save her. Right? She kind of takes a bit of agency with like wanting to see Namor's city or people in city and everything. Um, so I think that maybe could have been a little handled a little better. Were that maybe the plan from the start of Shuri being the protagonist, right? Because like that probably came up as an issue with the whole script writing process of this film. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean, I
know.
could very easily see it have being Shuri gets captured, like in the original version of the script, and then you have T'Challa be the one to go in and rescue her. Right? I'm
Totally.
sure that was likely the original plan, but then
Hmm.
stuff gets moved around. I think a
Yeah.
lot of her role was probably left over still from the original script, and then they
Yeah.
just gave her, and I think they sort of split up protagonist elements throughout the whole
Yeah.
cast to give them a little bit more of an ensemble feel rather
Hmm.
than just them being supporting.
And it
But
actually like worked for the most part, I think, which was
yeah,
great
for the most part.
for the most part. What else? Other highlights? I also really liked all of the set pieces. I loved like how much horror they leaned into, especially with that
Yep.
first introductory scene of
Yeah.
Namor and the Talocan people.
Oh yeah.
Um, the chase scene was probably my favorite when they went to go get Riri.
Hmm.
Another kind of highlight, I guess, is I'm just appreciative of the fact that it wasn't full Marvel cookie cutter
Yeah.
like it maybe could have been. Um, I know Matt, you still think it's like it was still very much a Marvel movie, but I think I'm just in the camp of like it could have been much worse.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been worse. I think given what like the hand they were dealt, they did the best that they could. And
Yeah,
I by no means think that it's a bad movie. Like I am only disappointed because I had such high
right.
expectations. But I think, they still did a good job and there is a lot of merit to this movie.
Hmm.
But there's
Um,
there's just there's a few things that I will get to when I talk about lowlights that I really just did not like.
um, yeah, like I think there wasn't as much humor as like some other Marvel films, which I really appreciated. They actually took the time to slow down a few times. Like almost every actor that was in the first one got like their moment to like kind of grieve and talk about T'Challa and everything, right? Which was great. Um, Kind of circling back to uh, set pieces and everything. I think the visual effects actually was probably the best of this year for Marvel films. It was definitely I think was more consistent than the first one, the first Black Panther.
Oh yeah, by
Because I
far.
mean,
I mean
yeah,
Definitely
that's
beats that like
that's sort
video
of the
game
pinnacle.
looking.
the first Black Panther is like the pinnacle of bad Marvel
Yeah.
CG.
That final battle on like the train
Yeah.
tracks was looking like a
that
video
was
game.
real bad. Yeah. Yeah, I guess, Matt, do you want to dive into more of your lowlights then?
Crack knuckles.
Here we go.
Deep breath.
I mean, I won't go too in depth because I don't want to just shit on this movie because it doesn't deserve to just get dunked on. But I really did not like the opening couple minutes.
Interesting.
I thought that it was just like way too forced, and
It
I
was
don't know.
almost kind of trying to be like Endgame in a way, where we got that like pre Marvel credit scene with Hawkeye and his family, right?
Yeah, I
Doing
feel
like
like
a really jarring, like punch you in the heart, like opening, right?
yeah, but I mean, I think it just, there's so many ways that they could have done that, and I just think that they took like this would have just been the first idea that somebody came up with and they decided to run with it instead of maybe thinking of a few other ways that they could have done that cold open with I mean, even just like starting with a little more of a slow burn, or doing something that maybe had a little bit more of the grief aspect other than just like chaos trying to move around, and then having Angela Bassett walk in and say, "Oh, your brother's with the spirit, whatever." Now I just thought, it's like, okay, we get it, he's dead in real life, and this is you killing him by very vaguely explaining what's going on. Another low light.
It could have been maybe. Sorry,
You
it
go
could have
ahead.
been maybe like a eulogy being delivered at the funeral or something.
Yeah,
like,
or
Wakandan
just
funerals seem to be different, but like something
just have
about
gone
that.
right to the funeral and just have started the whole thing out of just like have an entire sequence that is like set to music of his body being come out. Like, we don't need to see the moment where he's dying if it's already going to be happening off screen. Like, you're just telling us, the audience, exposition that we already know. Like, it's not really delivering any new info to us. It's just
nothing that couldn't be accomplished with a eulogy or an extended funeral scene. You could have cut that whole emergency sequence or whatever and just started with the funeral and then go to the Marvel credits and whatever. Right?
Yeah, and I think that would have been so much stronger if they had just gone right out of the gate with something emotionally impactful rather than starting off on that like, blah, 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 what's going on?
Like cold open, yeah.
The king has an illness.
The king is sick. We need to print him a new heart with the 3D printer. All that,
you could have cut that out.
Kind of like to give it some sense of merit. Like, there is sort of a through line in some sense of like Shuri tried to recreate the purple or the heart-shaped herb or whatever in the beginning, and then that plays part
they made
later
the call
too,
back
a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but would that have saved him? Because he already took that thing once. What was I don't know what the.
That's true, actually. Now that you bring that up, he already had taken the purple.
Yeah.
The heart
so do they just, if they take more of those herbs, does it just heal them and make them better? Is that the lore?
I don't know.
Also, why did all of the Talocan turn blue when they were out of the water and then not blue when they were underwater? Did they ever explain the reasoning there?
Beyond just like I guess logic and reasoning, maybe, of like, I think maybe some aquatic creatures change color when they're out of water. I don't know.
But it was like the second that they're out of the water, they're completely blue. It wasn't like they come out and then they turn blue after they've been out of the water for a long time. It was like whenever they were at the surface, they were blue, including near the end when they were doing their whole ship fight. Some of them were blue underwater, but then you go into the city and the same characters aren't blue, and you're like, "What's?" And then
I don't know.
and then Namor is just never blue. It's just
he was like a mutant, right?
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense why he would be different, but I would have liked to know why the other people were blue at all other than just maybe looking cool.
Well, and looking different too, right? To have some distinct, like these guys are blue, these guys are not blue.
True. And my biggest low light is just the whole ending fight in the third act. I thought it was like it had the same kind of strategic military logic as sending out the Dothraki at in the Long Night episode of Game of Thrones. Like, send them all out to attack out in the field. That makes sense, right? That makes sense from a military standpoint. And then they all fucking die. Like, we're going to fight these really strong aquatic creatures. I know, let's take our entire army out on one boat and go out where we have no way to escape. These guys can infinitely outnumber us, and we know that they have bombs and shit. So it's like, obviously, within the first couple minutes, they're going to start sinking the boat. And then what do you do after that?
Also, they had evacuated Wakanda, so they could have just brought the fight back to Wakanda, right?
They could have prepared and then done something on dry land where their strengths are, instead of, let's take these guys that are already stronger than us and fight them in their home turf.
I'm going to go fight a shark. Without any gear or anything, I'm going to go fight a shark in the ocean, and I'm going to win.
And I'm just like, really? This is your idea for like the big, and then you have them win? And like, I don't know. It just,
well, I mean, technically they don't win. They just get there in time to be like, okay, stop fighting.
Well, their plan succeeds, though.
Right.
Well, Shuri does take Namor to the desert. It was more of a beach than an actual desert.
Yeah, it was a beach, too. What the fuck?
I don't know what his problem was.
Yeah. But there, maybe it's more like a reverse psychology. Yeah, we're going to go to the water. We're going to win. Just kidding. Let's take him to the beach, not the desert. And he's like, I need water. Ugh.
Yeah, it just, for me, I'm like, Wakanda's in Africa, bro. It's hot in Africa. You could have just taken him there. The fact that their whole idea was just go out in one boat, I think is just such a lazy writing thing. And like, you really could not have thought of a smarter, more interesting way to have this fight rather than just do it out in the water. And I felt that the attack on Wakanda was so much more interesting.
I agree.
And well done. And then to have the next, like, what's supposed to be the one-up is happening just on this boat where you have no interesting background. It's all flat on one surface, just on, like, the top of this deck. It was just such a, I just thought it was really lazy and sort of nonsensical from a narrative standpoint. And I just wish that they had done something a little bit more interesting, or like a plan that maybe they had put more than 2 minutes of thought into. But, whatever. Their plan worked, I guess. They were able to capture him because maybe, of course, they wouldn't have expected the Wakandans to come out and fight them in the water. So... I don't know. But even if that fucking boat was invisible, you'd still see the water that wasn't there. The giant hole in the water where the boat would be sitting. Because it's not like the water just goes... I don't know. There's just too much like random logic being thrown at
it. All works with mirrors.
It's all just like nanobots can do anything.
Science is magic we understand.
It's invisible water that fills in the hole. And they can't hear the loud ass boat vibrating through the water either. Okay, so that rant over.
If I could hop in with a low light. I think the entire side story with Val and Ross, like that, I know that they're gonna start kind of get the ball rolling with the Thunderbolts and everything. But that felt really shoehorned in. There wasn't really... I guess there was kind of a conclusion that Okoye saves him from the transport vehicle or whatever.
I'm just trying to remember, too. like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall. Clearly, it wasn't memorable enough, but like, I don't recall what Ross actually helped them with, other than
He
maybe like staving the
well,
CIA off a little bit longer.
he told them who the scientist was. Like he led them to Riri,
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
and then he
Yeah,
tried to be their inside man on that,
which did not work
which did
because
not
Yeah.
work.
she was
I don't know.
she had him bugged all along.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
True.
part was definitely probably one of the weakest points
I
for me as well.
I also hope they go somewhere with them being divorced, because that was a reaction. That was actually a big reaction that my theater had. It's like, let's
Yeah.
go drive and talk about our failed marriage, and it was like, what?
Yeah, that's true.
That was such a throwaway line too. It
It
was
was
definitely made up for laughs.
But
And it's like, sorry, what?
but
Are we
I
going to talk about that?
but I like that though. Like they should do more of that, of be like sort of subtle and throw away stuff and like surprise you with things like that rather than
Yeah.
just beating you over the head and
Yeah,
saying,
that's fair.
you know,
Yes.
Hi, ex-husband.
hi, yes, oh hi, haven't seen you since we finalized the divorce papers 3 years ago when you moved out of the house. I still have your sweater. Would you like to come over and take it home with you?
I'll jump on your Peloton.
Yeah.
um anyways, I just felt like that there was I say the lack of a conclusion to that. We don't know what's happening with Val next. Yeah, she just kind of disappeared after arresting him, and yeah, just felt very shoehorned. That was probably one of the biggest gripes I had.
One of the like smaller nitpick things I had was I actually wasn't a fan of Okoye's new like costume and
Neither was
stuff. I think
Okoye.
Yeah,
yeah.
she's
Well,
not a
that
fan
is
of that.
part of why that like didn't work for me. Like, why would she wear this? She hates this thing. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like other Dora Milaje or whatever. Where like, oh, that looks gross in the beginning. She's like, I don't know, I kind of like it, right? It was like, why is she wearing this? I honestly would have just much preferred her to get reinstated into the Dora Milaje, but we got to have her comic accurate suit or whatever and have her
Yeah.
become the Midnight Fury or whatever the hell her name was.
It's sort of like my issue when they have lines in movies that's like something's really cheesy or stupid, and then another character will comment on how cheesy and stupid it is.
Yeah, the
It's
lamp
like
shading.
just it's just excusing yourself for doing a bad job. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, this looks stupid, and you're just calling your design team out for making a bad looking costume.
Yeah, it's like why are you making fun of, like, you're the one making the comic book movie. Why are you making fun of it? Like, just go with it, man.
Just
We're
make
here. We
either
paid
make
the
it better or own it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't get, like, they're so afraid of their own like uh content. Like they dance and tiptoe around magic all the time still. It's like just go with it, man. Like, we're into it. You don't have to like be like, oh, this is weird, right? Anyways, let's move on to, I mean, we can do this one pretty quickly, but like the creator's goal, do you guys think the filmmakers stuck the landing on their goal?
I think in terms of paying tribute to Chadwick, I think they did what they could. And I think that's kind of what their goal was to make sure that more important, like, of course, telling the Black Panther story, like continuing that story, but also like making sure that you pay tribute to Chadwick in the correct way.
Totally.
And I thought they did that.
Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, they had a job to do of salvaging this movie and paying their respects, and they did the best that they could given the circumstances. I think it was a success on the creative team. I wish that maybe they could have gotten another year to perfect
really
it,
smooth
but
out the kinks and everything.
to smooth out the kinks. But you know, it's just in the kind of pipeline that Marvel has, there's not really any room for making last minute changes. So given the time constraints,
unless it's VFX.
Well, yeah, but that's a whole other can
as a
of worms.
producer anyway.
Yeah. but I think, they did a solid job in what they were going for, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's much that they could have done better, unless the entire um, timeline had been shifted around, which I think is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they've already done so much re-shifting and re-jogging around everything with Phase 4. They probably couldn't afford it anymore.
yeah,
Um, how did you watch it, Matt? You got to see it early. Did you do AVX? Did you do 3D,
I
IMAX?
saw it in
What was it?
AVX, but it wasn't 3D.
Okay, so I think I paid for AVX no 3D, but they showed it in AVX 3D, which was not great. I was a little disappointed in that. I
In the fact that you watched it in 3D, or the 3D was disappointing?
a little bit of both, but more so the former. I just was not like interested in seeing. I rarely am ever seeing a movie, or rarely am ever interested in seeing a movie nowadays in 3D unless it's like the Avatar movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Jake, how did you see it? Were you in? You were in 3D too, weren't you?
I also had to. I
Well, you
actually
could
have to.
also wear glasses too, so that
I
adds
also
like an
wore, yeah,
extra
Yeah,
I
zone.
did
that's great.
double up on glasses with the 3D. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. I thought that there were some shots that were ruined. There was some stuff that I saw that I was watching, and it would be a little like soft, out of focus, and I'm like, is that supposed to be in focus? Like when you see stuff that's like when you see how the camera focuses, it's like, oh my good, like it's pretty jarring at times.
Yeah, takes you out of it a little bit.
Yeah, there was some shots that looked pretty bad that I think that was only because of the 3D. So
Yeah, because I didn't
um,
notice any focus issues when I was watching it.
Hmm.
like when there'd be like a big group of people, like the 3D is very sharp on that front prominent person, but as it goes back, it just
Yeah,
started like, yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
too visually pleasing, but
No.
yeah.
I'm not gonna that's not a gripe on the movie. I think it's just more the situation that I was in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think for 3D in general, it is really designed for you to look at one specific part of the image,
Hmm.
and they want you to look at that one spot, and it's jarring and uncomfortable to look at other stuff because of how it's placed out of focus. So you don't really get the same freedom of being able to like look around the frame and to
Hmm.
be able to pick up on stuff in the background, because
Which is
it's really
also almost
drawing your eyes
inevitable
to
in a
one
movie
spot.
theater.
Yeah, you got such a huge screen, you're going to look around a little bit. You're not just going
Yeah.
to stare at the person talking.
Yeah. Um. All right. Let's sum up some pros and cons, boys. What were some of your favorite and least favorite? Some pros and cons. Jake, you want to start?
For a pro, I'll say the introduction of new characters, particularly Ironheart and Namor. Those two, I was very sold on them,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm excited to see what they do next.
Matt, what was a
Uh,
pro?
I really liked all of the underwater stuff. I think the underwater stuff was really great. A lot better than previous things like Aquaman, where
Mm-hmm.
you have lots of sequences happening underwater. I still don't think it holds a candle to the sneak peek that we saw for
No, nor will
Avatar.
it.
And it makes me very excited to see what James Cameron's going to do with the underwater stuff, because it's
Me
just
too.
like it's going to be a whole other level. And if this stuff in Wakanda Forever looked this good, then the stuff in The Way of Water is going to knock people on their ass.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
I also enjoyed. I thought the music was good. Like I liked the music in this better than the first Black Panther. Personally, I thought it was
Oh,
more
interesting.
fitting tonally. Like the other movie just had a lot of pop songs that were sort of made to be popular and radio friendly, but didn't really mix well into the context that they were used in the movie.
Hmm.
But in this case, I think it was a lot more made for the movie rather than made for the soundtrack. Uh, and yeah, I think as well, Riri's had some good lines. She had some good zingers, some good one-liners. She was like the good comic relief type character, but also didn't feel forced. It felt very natural to her character.
Oh, and she had value other than that, right?
And she wasn't just the funny character either.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward. I mean, she's very clearly now the Tony Stark replacement, and she's only got so much original character energy so far. But I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. And then Namor as well, another great great as far as Marvel villains go. Namor is one of the top ones for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the chase sequence on the bridge and everything. The whole, like, all of the close combat fights, like the one-on-one fights, like especially with Okoye and that one Talokan warrior. That was some of my favorite stuff of the film. I actually think I think the first film utilized the original score better than this one, with all the like Wakandan themes and everything. That felt a little more focused and direct and placed better. But I think I would agree with you that like all of the pop music, I think, was better integrated in this one. One of my cons, I guess, would be actually no, another pro. I really enjoyed the amount of horror they leaned into with the introduction of Namor and the Talokan people. And then I guess an overall con would just be the 3/4 measure that the film was. It walked right up to the line with a lot of interesting concepts and themes that they could have just dove headfirst into, right? But they didn't quite stick the landing on. Yeah. Jake, do you have a con for the film?
I'll just, for my con, I'll say that the shoehorning of Val, that side story, just kind of squeaked that in there. I noticed it, but I don't think it. I think they could have fit that in somewhere else.
Totally. All right. Would you guys recommend this to somebody at all? And who would you, I guess?
I mean, I'd say if you're a fan of Marvel, watch it. If you're not, don't. It's not anything special that's going to sell you on
films,
superheroes if you're not into it already. But I'd also say at the same time that if you're like a casual viewer and you don't care about keeping up with everything, that it's almost skippable in some.
I was going to say it's not actually necessary to the grand scheme. If you're here for the Secret Wars big event stuff, I don't think this has any part to play in it other than now Shuri is Black Panther. That's about it. And Namor is around now, and Ironheart. That's about it.
Yeah.
Those characters exist. That's about it.
I think the only movie of this phase that people really need to see is Spider-Man. And everything else is just
even
whatever.
That one, I don't know how integral that is to the overall.
I don't think it's necessarily important to I mean,
Yeah.
But as far as like, it's the best one. It's the best one. It's the most enjoyable, and it gives you enough that it stands on its own as well.
By a country mile, it is the best one in Phase 4.
I think it is important considering how now, once again, Spider-Man's not an Avenger. No one knows who he is now, so he now needs to reestablish himself as I don't know if I would say Avenger, but he's in that New York area. I thought that he was going to be there at the end of Hawkeye, but he wasn't.
They still know Spider-Man, don't they? They just don't know
Spider-Man. They just don't know Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is still a huge thing,
and he doesn't have Stark Tech anymore to help him.
No.
And they do introduce the multiverse, although not as explicitly as the Multiverse of Madness, but I think to a degree that sets it up, and you will still get the gist of it when Secret Wars comes along.
It uses it as a jumping off point into the story for the Spider-Man movie, not like things like Loki or Multiverse of Madness, where they're like way more about the multiverse. Spider-Man just kind of like, this thing happens from the multiverse, and then they go more into Peter Parker's story, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Not really a necessary watch. If you want a big, fun action blockbuster that's new and exciting, then, I mean, yeah, it's definitely not as fun, I would say. It's definitely, it still has that like somber tone for sure. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for this No Score review show. So Matt and Jake and myself are all on Letterboxd. If watching our webcams and listening to our supple voices wasn't enough for you, you can also read words we have written for our reviews of this movie, as well as other ones. Matt, do you have any recommendations for the audience? Anything you've watched recently other than All Quiet?
I mean, no other movies have really popped out since. But I'd say, watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia on Disney Plus.
Nice.
That's what I've been watching lately. It's real good. It's real. Going through the early seasons from the early 2000s, it's very politically incorrect, and the fact that they were able to get away with some of the stuff that they did back then is sort of mind-blowing in some ways, but it's a good way to reflect and see like how far we've come with standards for what is acceptable. But I think it, in a way, it almost makes it more funny looking at this and thinking like, holy shit, I can't believe there was a time when people thought this was
that
okay.
was normal at one
and
point.
It's funny because of how not funny it would be to do now,
right?
In a way. Sort of like,
it's
when
like
you look
kind
back
of absurdist humor almost.
Yeah, it's absurdist, and it works because all of these characters are supposed to be absolute horrible pieces of shit. Right. You're not sympathizing with them. You're looking at them and be like, oh, fuck all of these people. They're all horrible. So It kind of works in that regard.
That's good. Jake, do you have any other plugs or recommendations?
No plugs. Twitch.tv/stream live. That's pretty much.
No plugs.
And then to plug something.
But I'm not going live anywhere. I know. Recommendations.
Use your Twitch Prime sub.
Use your Prime sub.
And then maybe he'll get back out there on the stream again one day.
Yeah. Use it to coax him out of his cave.
Recommendations? Just I'm not too sure. I'm just excited for what's coming up. The three of us are going to be seeing Bardo in a couple weeks. Nick, I'm seeing Decision to Leave with you on Sunday.
That's in 1 week, my guy. 1 week.
That's in 1 week?
1 week from Sunday.
Oh, damn. 1 week from Sunday. We're just seeing movies on Sundays now. I'm going to try to get the Weird Al movie in sometime this week. I'm also excited I'm also going to probably see Glass Onion in theaters, as well as one that's kind of piqued my interest is Devotion. This fighter pilot movie with with Jonathan Majors and and Glenn Powell just going straight over from Top Gun into this one now. So
what are the chances, hey?
He's
the guy. He's the guy.
He's the guy.
Yeah. Follow me on Letterboxd. That's the place to be if you want more of my opinions.
Yep. Cool. Well, you know where to find me at No Score or at No Score Reviews on all the socials. Currently, as of this recording, playing God of War Ragnarok. Just came out. It's new. It's exciting. It's fresh. It's real good. So go check that out if you want. If you want more No Score review show, me and Matt reviewed House of the Dragon, and that will be up soon. It is all edited, just needs to be rendered and uploaded. And
I guess it'll probably be up before this one is, right?
It will be up before
so
this
it'll
one,
be up
yes.
already at the time of somebody listening to this.
Exactly. So if you haven't listened or watched that, go check that out. And then if you also want to see Jake more on the review show, you can go check out the She-Hulk Attorney at Law review, where we tear that show a new one.
Yeah, and you discuss the twerking scene for 45 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. We
It's
talk
actually
ad
just a loop.
nauseum about only the twerking scene, and that is it. Twerking scene.
Happy Thanksgiving
Stop
for all
twerking.
American viewers.
Yeah, right.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching the No Score Review Show, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes, but that's not a score. I wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
consider
So
that a
turn to
score.
your right, and then there'll be a keypad there.
Oh, here it is.
This is fun.
Yeah. So then, and once
Halfway
again, you
through
can enter
Jimmy's-
that.
It is my show. Oh my god. There's bathroom humor.
Do you want me to stay on the line just to confirm that you got the locker open?
This is going up
Okay,
on the
perfect.
internet, Jake. I know you can't hear me, but we're
Okay.
going to put all that code
Okay,
information
perfect.
on the internet
Right. Later.
because you decided to unmute your mic.
Yeah, bathroom humor.
What
Yeah, I knew
almost
it.
turned into a meme just ended up
Was
being
it
boring work.
just that she couldn't figure out what the
She
pin
couldn't find
pad was?
the locker pin pad. Yeah, I
The
think she
one
was. I think she was entering it on the. Actually, no. She saw the sign on the.
that says not for
That
lockers.
says not for lockers.
And then literally within 2 feet, there was another pin pad that said this
Yeah.
is for lockers, and she couldn't find it.
Yeah, I couldn't hear her with my headphones on. I had to take it off. Are we gonna keep going?
We're
we
still
done?
rolling, baby.
Okay, that was so funny how you like tossed it to me and then the on-call phone goes off.